This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Fan.
Superior Landscape and Irrigation celebrating 21 years tomorrow, Saturday the 12th from 9 to 5 at the grand opening of their new showroom in Maplewood. Enjoy free food and chances to win a hot tub, solo stove, grand opening, exclusive deals, and a ton more. Find out all the info at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
All right, you tell me, maybe we can get some hockey insiders to help us regarding this particular issue. But the double overtime game in which future Wild defender Zeev Buium played went into double overtime. I don't know how long into the second overtime that game went. That was had to be just a soul-crushing loss for the University of Denver, right? Double overtime to the Western Michigan Broncos. And Zeev logged 51 minutes and 41 seconds of ice time.
Pretty good.
Not only more than any other player in the game, apparently it was 15 more minutes than any other player logged in this particular game. So the percentage allegedly is he played in 64% of game time. So is that like unprecedented, or in college? I assume in college it happens, the percentage can be much higher than it would tend to be
probably
in NHL games. But I'm trying to see, is that like all-time kind of a record, or one that is impressive but happens a decent amount every college hockey season at least?
Well, probably in the playoffs, in these scenarios, it happens more than you would think. Yeah. But even that is 64%.
It sounds astounding.
It does.
It's hockey.
And every minute, and what's the point of, like last night, they said, I'm going to make a basketball analogy just for fallness. Chris Finch said that Anthony Edwards was gassed last night in the fourth quarter because he had played so much and he had been so good. Like every minute after a certain number of minutes.
He's in tip-top shape this year.
I know. Well, that's the other thing.
Right.
That's what I didn't mean to derail it there. But after 45 minutes or 50 minutes, you're probably pretty tired, right?
You got to be. Yeah.
And he's got 10, 15 more minutes of ice time after that. Now, defensemen, I'm sure you can find ways to give yourself breaks, right? You're not jumping up in every play. You're giving yourself a little extra step to get back. I'm sure there's ways you get around it to. Because Suter used to play half the game here. Remember, that was the bit with him when you bring Suter, and Faber will oftentimes be up towards there, right? Where you're talking about legitimately half the game. But as things get tighter and as the moments get more important, you start probably going every other shift, I would imagine, and that's why you're out there so long.
Yeah, that sounds impressive to me. Now, did I talk him into the 10 on confidence signing Kaprizov long term? Because he was going to offer a squishy 10. I admonished him. This was the 0-10 game. 0 being no chance you're going to sign Kaprizov. That would have been news if he'd gone with 0.
Right.
10 being a deadlock certainty. And he started with, I'd like to think, and then I said, wait a minute, that's not a guaranteed answer. And he said, okay, 10.
Yeah, he didn't even go 9.5.
But did I talk him into it? How I guess momentous of a proclamation, how much confidence should that proclamation give Wild fans if I, to a certain extent, maybe seem to talk him into it?
I don't think Bill Guerin can be talked into anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you necessarily, I don't think he would have said that if he didn't have great background feel for how the conversations have gone with Kaprizov and obviously his agent, who's been in town quite a bit, I know, over the last year or so. So I don't know if Bill Guerin will say anything to appease a radio audience. I think he's a truth teller for the most part.
He tries to be, I think,
when he doesn't tell you the truth, he tells you he's lying about injuries and things and why he can't tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But on that one, because that is quite a corner to box yourself into if you don't feel it's a 10. Or at least really close to a 10.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those that can come back to bite you now.
Oh, we'll definitely mark it down for sure. I'm glad he was declarative. And see, this is what I actually look. You don't have to agree with all of Guerin's moves. You don't have to agree with any of his moves. But what I love about him is, you know this and I know this, most general managers would have brushed that question off and said, don't ask me stuff like that yet. We're trying to win a playoff berth. I'm not going to talk about those things that are going to be off-season considerations, right? He doesn't play that card, which is part of the reason we appreciate having him on to the degree that we do. Dan Minnesota is taking me to task, saying, I don't know about soul crushing. Denver has won the national championship 2 of the last 3 years. Well,
you're there. You're playing.
I still think the way I look at any overtime, but certainly double overtime postseason game. This is a Frozen Four game, right? National semifinal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
I don't care if you've won 5 in a row. That's soul. I'm going to say it's soul crushing to either team that loses. It's the old. You reach a point where you don't think either team deserves to lose. The suddenness with which you lose, and I don't know if there was anything, particularly provocative or controversial about the way they lost, but I would still think it could be soul crushing no matter how many titles you've won in a row. Now, at that moment, don't you?
Of course it is. Yes. Do you think they feel any better today that they lost last night?
That they have other banners?
Won?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, 20 years from now, you go, what a run you had. But in the moment, especially for Zeev, that's his last game. I talked to Russo about this last week while you were out, because it still fascinates me that hockey is the one sport where a hockey player, a college player, can have their season and then their college career end. Yeah. And then 9 minutes later, they're in the lineup for an NHL team. It's bizarre. I mean, Jimmy Snuggerud's already played.
Yes.
Another Gopher's already played. Like Brock Faber did that. They have the you want to talk about soul-crushing national title game in Tampa where they lose the big lead and lose in overtime. And Faber is in Minnesota playing for the Wild. I mean, I don't know if he was here, but he's playing for the Wild like 2 days later. It's crazy.
It is crazy, yeah.
But that's what they do.
And it's...
But his career ended last night. His last college game.
Right.
He'll never have that again. Even with the national titles, he'll never have that again. And so I'm sure it was soul-crushing.
And the way he put it with us, he said, Zeev will attend the Hobie Baker event tonight, and we either meet the team in Vancouver tomorrow or in Minnesota on Sunday. So, I think he kind of hinted, too, that it would be kind of hard to ask him to play tonight. And I don't know if that was on the basis of how recently he played, period, or, again, the number of minutes he played would have something to do with it. And, look, there's great buzz on him, great curiosity to see how quickly he can become a factor. Now, didn't Russo give us the impression yesterday, don't Keitel it too much, don't get too far ahead of it?
Yes.
He doesn't think there's going to be this immediate, all Zeev all the time in the lineup.
Right, especially because they've got 2 regular season games left after this one. I'm sure he'll play in those 2. I think the bigger question is what type of postseason role is he going to have?
Yeah.
And the Faber comparison, he also brought that up. He said even a couple of years ago, Faber played, but Brock even admitted to him, he said, yeah, I played, but they weren't really putting me in there against the big guys. He goes, everybody said I played great. I was playing against the 3rd and 4th liners in the postseason. I was just out there kind of holding the spot.
Yes, that's right.
So there's that's the bigger question: is what type, is he going to even have a Brock Faber postseason type role? We don't really know that for sure yet, but he'll come up here and play, I'm sure, especially if they have a playoff spot clinched.
Let's get to a rather concerning development out of Denver, Colorado that might be rather impactful and might be concerning. If you are a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, we'll discuss that. Prepare for Ben Goessling at 4.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
30.
Man. It's the Friday finale of iHeartRadio Week, only on Wheel of Fortune, and Wheel welcomes multi-platinum recording artist Jason Derulo, Andy Grammer, and JoJo to the show. One lucky contestant has the chance to win tickets to the iHeartRadio Music Awards in Los Angeles. Watch Wheel of Fortune tonight. Check your local listings.
Deep dive out of Denver on what the hell happened to the Nuggets. The ongoing schism between the general manager and the head coach that ultimately led to apparently both of them being dismissed, if you want to believe the stories. Let me just quote directly from a piece that I think appeared yesterday. As for the front office, Josh Kroenke has made it clear since Tuesday's firings that there will be a search for Calvin Booth's, that's the general manager, his replacement. League sources expect there to be discussions about a possible reunion with Tim Connelly, the former Nuggets general manager who drafted Jokic and whose departure to the Wolves in May 2022 led to Booth's promotion from his assistant general manager role.
It's frustrating.
Uh-oh. While Conley has an opt-out in his contract for this summer, it is, however, widely believed that new Wolves owners Alex Rodriguez and Mark Tolosa-Lori will do what it takes to retain him. League sources say Conley's right-hand man in Minnesota, general manager Matt Lloyd, is expected to receive consideration for the Nuggets job as well.
He's very highly thought of.
So maybe that's the way out of the box, where we get to keep Tim Connelly. They get a piece of Tim Connelly with Matt Lloyd. We'll see. It's very difficult to say. If you're the Kroenkes, you could see easily why you want to run back to Connelly, because one of the things laid out in this story is that one of Connelly's strengths is demeanor. That, again, the assumption is he and Malone, who he hired, had disagreements. In fact, you'll recall Connelly was under heavy heat to fire Malone, right, when they kept having playoff failures.
That's right.
And he held in. And then they won the title after he left, but it was largely his team. And I'm sure there were disagreements, but because Malone is irascible, he is volatile, he is combustible. But the feeling is that he's so low-key, and he is, Connelly, is so even-keel, that whatever disagreements might have existed, they were more easily dealt with. It wasn't going to be open warfare. It wasn't going to be dogs and cats living together, which is apparently what it turned into. Now, is there a chance it wasn't quite as awful as is being suggested now? Yes, because this is what generally happens after the fact.
Usually.
We went through this when Tibbs left, right? When Tibbs was dismissed. And, I mean, we had stories basically about how he was breaking windows and just a lot of stupidity started. Anyway, Booth apparently is a little more a little more combative himself. And so that was part of perhaps what is missing in Denver was a general manager who could sort of deal with Malone's moods better and not be offended by them. For that reason, you could see the Kroenkes longing to bring back some of that. So I'm sure they're going to kick Conley is no fool. He's going to play this thing out. He's already got to be one of the most highly compensated front office people in the league, does he not?
Probably.
Got to be close to the top of the list.
Yep.
He's going to get more money out of this, there's no question, because he does have an out in the contract. And I don't know. I mean, who knows how interested he might be. He had great feelings about his experiences in Denver. My guess is that the assumption is A-Rod and Laurie want him here, want to keep him here. They want to keep that stability.
That's one of their first big moves.
It would have to be. You'd think that you don't want to take control of the team and immediately having to mess with that.
Lose the guy you brought.
Right.
Yeah.
So the assumption is they would work hard to keep him. That money would not get in the way of that, even though now it's their money. It's no longer Glenn Taylor's money, as it was when they lured him over with a very lucrative contract on the front end. So it is going to be a story worth watching, because I think my gut tells me he'll stay, but I don't think you can say for sure, because it's a place he does love and knows well. And will it be handled well? Is there something that might get his nose out of joint here? Is there some piece of this we don't completely understand? Does the Wolves' performance in the playoffs this year run into it? Does that have anything to do with it? If they go in the first round and get swept, right? If we assume that they're going to be a top 6 and they lose in 5 in the first round or lose in 4 and don't play particularly well, might that have some impact on all this? I don't know. But it's not surprising to hear further confirmation that they're going to explore the Conley option. And maybe, as I said, the best case scenario is, well, you don't get Conley, but you get the guy who worked with Conley, Matt Lloyd, who, by the way, I would assume would be cheaper.
Yeah, and that's a big thing with Denver, too, by the way. It
seems to be, although, again, the Kroenkes, it's weird because they run a lot of teams. I mean, the Rams, I think, there have been a lot of complaints about they run that program on the cheap. I don't know.
I doubt
They've got a bunch of, aren't they Lanch, too?
Yes.
I think. Then they've got soccer. That it has been weird that when it comes to, sort of supporting cast people,
the extra stuff
from the moment they won the title, it was almost like we can't do this, we can't do that. And there is something to say for the fact that you can be mad at your general manager and your coach about the way they don't get along. But when you look back, I would say this to the Kroenkes. I mean, and we don't have a good vibe. I don't think they know us. I don't think they podcast the show.
The only experience we have with the Kroenkes is Stan kicking everybody out of the TCF Bank Stadium bathroom.
Remember that?
In the press box and making other adults wait.
You can't even make that up.
Which is still the
that
most
in itself is reason to root against
pathetic thing ever.
But wouldn't you say, when you look back later, like on your deathbed, and you're talking about your regrets, and you'd say, well, my biggest regret? I had a basketball player who might well go down as one of the top 10 players of all time. There are people saying that who I respect with a straight face.
It's not outlandish.
And I didn't do everything in my power financially and every other way to give him the best supporting cast players to take the fullest advantage of what that player, that incredibly unique, talented, interesting, skilled basketball player offered, right? They got one title. And by the way, I don't even think Jamal Murray has ever made an all-NBA team. Right. I don't think he's been in, you go for 15 players deep, first, second, third team. I don't think, maybe he's got a third team in there, but I'm not sure. Now, he's good. When he was good, he was very good.
Yeah.
The year they won it.
Has he even been an all-star?
But it's a good question. I don't know. You say, man, how did we do that? We worry about maximizing the money later, don't you think?
Yes.
That's the one legitimate question I think I would have for them. And I know some people say, look, if Murray's not healthy, the rest of it, your supporting cast doesn't matter. And there's some truth to that too, right? But I would still say that's a guy that, no, I can't. Man, those guys don't come along. I mean, there's nobody right now in the league. There's nobody I put in that classification in terms of how hard I would work to make sure we're giving our. And you can't guarantee titles, but to give yourself a best chance to win more titles.
Well, the craziest thing of the last few years in the NBA are you have Joker, who you're talking about, who's not being supported, and then the only other guy I might put in that category right now, Luka, who hasn't won a title but did drag a team to the finals, even with Kyrie, but not a lot of other greatness, right? Not a lot of established guys for sure. He got traded and basically given away.
That's
so
true.
You got Joker, who's got no help, and then you got Luka, who Dallas just said, we're going to send you. We're not even going to field offers. We're just going to get rid of you. Like
we're not going to demand, at the very least, Austin Reeves. That's still the other if you're going to do it in the dead of the night with the Lakers. At the very least, don't you have to demand he's part of the deal? It's bizarre.
Or the other first-round pick.
Right. Yes.
That they also had available.
Yes.
I mean, at least something.
Yeah.
So those are consensus top 2 of 3 or 2 of 4 in the league right now, those two guys. And just bizarre stuff is happening around them. It is crazy times.
Maybe we want it to go bad in Denver, even with the coaching change. They get swept. Joker says, I want out of here. We get Joker here. Conley is reunited here rather than Conley going back there to be reunited with Joker. Joker comes to us because he loves Conley and loves Ant because everybody loves Ant. And how many titles in the row do we win? 4, 5, 6?
Well,
of course, who we giving up for Joker? They'd want Ant.
I'd give him everybody but Ant.
Would you give up Ant?
No. Well,
the problem is if you give up Ant, then you're kind of back to you're a good team,
right?
But you Joker's got to have. There's got to be a Batman because there's no Robin there really. If you want to consider Edwards a Robin to Joker's Batman, we don't have one. We don't have a Robin.
Not really.
Yeah. Well, it's a silly conversation anyway, but it's fun. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause. We're going to talk more football. We started the show with it. I didn't expect it, but the options for the Vikings at backup quarterback are dwindling. Should we start panicking about that? Is there a particular reason the Vikings are waiting as long as they continue to wait? We'll kind of get a complete update on a number of fronts when it comes to your favorite football team from our guy Ben.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Goessling, that's...
You can join Sauce and Nordo for a live broadcast of Saturdays with Sauce at the Twin Cities Auto Show, Saturday, April 19th. Drop by the iHeart Zone from noon to 2 to catch the show. Meet the guys, grab some KFAN gear. All the details at KFAN.com, and the keyword is calendar.
Questions for our football big knocker, Ben Goessling, covers the team for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com, who joins us weekly. Now we almost feel like necessarily 52 months out of the year, although now we're getting increasingly close, I guess we'd have to the National Football League draft in Dateline, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Goessling joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline, and as always, he is brought to you by Standard Heating and Air. Do we have any way to handicap how well represented Vikings Rubes will be in Green Bay for the draft?
It will be interesting to see how this goes. The best I can offer is I will be over there, I believe, the day before the draft for some of the press conference festivities. I think Emily Leiker and I are going over there, and Mark Craig will be there day of. So we will have boots on the ground, as we tend to do with all of our Vikings writers. So we'll get a sense of it. I don't know ahead of time, and I know it's expensive. Hotels are like a Packer home game, which means you're probably paying $350 a night, if not more than that. So we'll see how many people make the trip. But I would expect, it never stops Vikings fans from going over there during the season. So my guess is there will be a purple contingent over in Lombardi Avenue, Oneida Street in a couple of weeks here. A
lot of pressure. You don't want to be embarrassed. It's a neighboring state. You don't want to be, dominated by the Detroit Lions, for example, and I was trying to figure out, this in terms of driving, is Green Bay closer to Chicago or MSP?
Well, it's typically about 4 hours from here. And the Star Tribune caravan has done it in less than that. I think when we're trying to get back sometimes after some of those games, Chip Scoggins, when he's wanting to get back, he's, we got to go. So, I think it's about 4 from here. I would think from Chicago, you're probably talking similar. I think it
might be a little less. I suppose
coming through Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think it might be a little less because Milwaukee. Yeah, Chicago, Milwaukee, as I recall, it's been a while since I've done the drive. That's not much more than an hour and a half, isn't it? In that range,
right. So, yeah, and then Green Bay to Milwaukee is probably 2. Yeah, Milwaukee to Green Bay from there. So yeah, it might be a little
bit closer.
I'm looking at 3 hours and 20 minutes. Chicago to Green Bay.
3:20. Okay,
just right up the lake.
That would be closer than here. So we have that excuse if the Bears Rubes show up and dominate. All right,
3:20. Huh? Challenge accepted.
So here's the deal. I keep hearing that April 28 is a date we should be paying attention to, and maybe even a date related to whatever the Vikings' master plan is for the backup quarterback position. Tell me if that's true and what is significant about that date, where it fits in.
It is entirely possible that the moment you go on the air for Bumper to Bumper on April 28th, you will need to hit the breaking news sounder because 3 p.m. Central Time is the deadline for which teams can sign free agents. I suppose 3:01 p.m. After 3 p.m., you can sign a free agent. It does not affect the compensatory pick formula anymore between now and the rest of the season. So if you wait until 3:01, you can sign whoever you want at whatever price you want, and you're not affecting anything you might get in next year's draft. And the Vikings believe they're going to get at least 2 comp picks next year, possibly 3 if Trent Sherfield ends up having enough of a role in Denver that his contract gets elevated. And we don't need to get into all of the boring details, but they are trying to protect those picks. So that is certainly part of the reason they are taking a while to do it. And, Joe Flacco, a guy who I think was on their radar, signs today with Cleveland. So you lose on some of those guys, and that's the risk. But I think that deadline is still very much in their mind. So that 3 p.m. on August 28th, or whatever month it is, April 28th.
April. There you go. 17 days. Yeah.
Yeah. One of those, whatever month it is, 3 p.m. that Monday, they can do it, and they won't have to be affected by the comp pick. So that is, in fact, the deadline we should keep in mind.
All right. So I think Drew Lock went to Seattle. I'm not even sure he was on the Vikings' radar, but it's another name. And you mentioned that the geezer is returning to Cleveland and might have been an option that people were talking about for us. So, on paper, it would seem that we're down to Carson Wentz, or Tannehill. I guess there's always the possibility of a deal. We've earmarked somebody that another team has that but I generally don't want to give up all that much. So how should if it does sort of come down to Wentz or Tannehill, how should Vikings fans feel about either of those options as backup QB?
Well, they have some familiarity with Wentz. Josh McCown actually backed him up in Philadelphia. He was with Carson Wentz as the Eagles backup, one of the last jobs he had in the NFL as a player. So they do have some history with him. They understand kind of what makes him tick, probably better than a lot of teams would. So that could be an option. You can feel good about him, or you can feel not so good about him based on familiarity with him, but they will have enough to go off of based on McCown's experience with him on top of everything else that they may be able to get from it. So, that gives them at least a little bit of a background to work off of there. I'm not sure how that plays. I mean, I think the question with him is always, how does he fit in the room? Is he going to be a guy that is taking J.J. McCarthy under his wing, or does he still have his own aspirations? I think all of those questions would be part of it. Tannehill shares an agent with J.J. McCarthy. I think there's enough of an understanding that there are different time horizons, to use the Kwesi phrase, that could work. But with him, he didn't play at all last year. Does he want to come back and do it? Does he want to live in Minnesota? All of those questions, I think, would be the ones you'd have to answer with him. And then beyond that, you're probably talking about a trade somewhere. There may be other names out there that they have their eyes on beyond the prominent ones. But, we're kind of down to that at this point. And if you're waiting another couple of weeks, they do have to have a number of ways to go, knowing that if you're waiting until April 28th, some of these guys may sign elsewhere, as we saw happen with Locke and Flacco today.
Yeah, that pretty much lays it out. Now, the other name we haven't mentioned is Cousins, we talked about this earlier in the show. I would have to think, even if you're not a huge Cousins fan, as a backup quarterback, he'd be an outstanding option because of his experience and because he's been pretty damn good. Now he faded badly late. I think there may be even some questions where he is physically. And then there's the question of whether he might be humbled enough at some point where he would be willing to accept a backup role. Because I think, in my view, I want to get your view on this. I mean, in my view, the Cousins temperament is such that if he gets to that place, as competitive as I think he is, if he gets the place where he's got no choice, that he would clearly not be a disruptive influence where we'd have to worry about, you would have to worry about him popping off to somebody nationally every other week, the way that, would be the concern, obviously, with A-Raj. But how realistic a possibility might he be in this mix, do you think?
Well, I think it's one of those things where if that's what it comes down to for him and there's no option to start, and the Flacco contract in Cleveland certainly factors into this, because I think that's the spot everybody figured may be an option. And they didn't give Flacco all that much money. So it's, I suppose, still possible that happens and Cousins is reunited with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. But my sense of it has been that if he does get to that point where there is no realistic option to start, that Minnesota would be attractive to him for a lot of obvious reasons. He knows the offense better than just about anybody outside of the coaching staff. He knows the area. Maybe he can get his house back and his neighbor can shovel his driveway again. I mean, schools are familiar. All of those kinds of things are there for him. And the question I have is, how does that play in the locker room? A lot of the factors you bring up, I think, are the ones they'd have to feel good about, because there were a lot of guys in that locker room when he left that had a lot of positive things to say about him as a leader and how he had developed as a quarterback in the offense. I remember Brian O'Neill was very vocal. Obviously, Justin Jefferson has had a lot of success with him. I don't think Justin Jefferson is going to be one to make it an issue. I think they'll be fine, but Cousins would have to come in with an understanding of, I'm not the guy anymore. I'm coming in as a backup that is a good resource for J.J. McCarthy, and I can run the offense if needed. I think that's a conversation that he and Kevin O'Connell would have to have. And, they are still, their families are close. I know they're still in contact, and that may make that easier, but you would have to have a pretty clear understanding of a lot of those things for that to work. I think if they were able to figure that out and the money was palatable for the Vikings, I wouldn't rule it out. I think there would be enough openness to consider it that if they could figure out the fit in the locker room, I wouldn't rule that possibility out.
Yeah. Ben Goessling joins us to talk football. Bradshaw and Brand KFAN text line is open at 64686. Guardsy and I, when we were taping the Enough Said show today, the football question Lori Fisher had for us was, who should the Vikings be considering with their first round pick? That is, if we don't move out of the first round into the second, third, fourth, or fifth. And I said, as boring an answer as it is, that given how aggressive, I think, and productive the Vikings have been in free agency, I think it should liberate them to go back to the cliche, the best athlete available. I want to take the best player. I don't even care how deep you are at a given position. If you think you've got a guy who's better than should be available to you when you pick, to me, that's especially how you pick in this draft. How do you view it? How do you think the Vikings view it?
I think that read is pretty good. I mean, I think a lot of the way they're talking about it is very much in that capacity. And, they're not going to tip their hand too much. I think we'll hear from Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah next week, it looks like, in a press conference to kind of talk about some of the draft stuff. But they are in a position to go a number of different ways. I know they've done some homework on defensive line, certainly offensive line, probably a guard is still a consideration. They need another safety. I think that's something they have to think about with Harrison Smith and then Josh Metellus heading into a contract year. And then corner is always a need, as the previous head coach would be fond of reminding us that the right number of corners is just one more. So I think there are a number of ways you could go. I think you could talk about even wide receiver depth or running back. I don't think those are going to be first-round picks necessarily, but there are enough ways to do it that I think it makes sense. Because the thing to remember with them, too, Dan, is that they're a 14-win team last year. They've been awfully successful, but this is not a roster that's loaded with young talent.
Great point.
I mean, they hope that Dallas Turner is and McCarthy is, but it is still built with older players, and you need to have a few years of drafts to refill some of these things. You can't assume that just because you have edge rushers right now with Bernard and Van Ginkel that in 3 years that's going to look exactly the same. You're not talking about 23, 24-year-old players at this point. So I think it does give them some freedom to do a number of different things. And if they feel good about their options at 24, they may say, if there's a chance to trade back, get another pick, and we still have some paths to go at, say, 28, 29, whatever it would happen to be, I think that would be an attractive option as well.
Yeah, older players, and that generally means more expensive players, right? So that's the whole idea. That's why you want that's what the best teams do, is they develop within and are effective enough in the draft where they can answer some of those same questions without spending that much on free agents each year. So there's always a balance, but that the Vikings do need to correct the imbalance right now, and that's with more young players as well. What are you, in terms of I know you guys are going to have all kinds of draft coverage, and we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that, I'm sure, next week as well. What kind of projects are you guys working on in that regard in preparation?
Well, we've had, I think Andrew Kramer's got a story coming on Ariante Ursary from the Gophers, just kind of a story on his background and his journey to this point. So we'll have some local stuff. Bilal Kone, Apple Valley grad, actually, who has made his way to the NFL Combine. I think we've got a profile coming on him as well. And then I've kind of been just doodling around on this idea of the 40-yard dash and talked to people at the Combine about this. Like, why do we still care about it? It's the big sideshow. How useful is this in the era of, miles per hour tracking and all of these kinds of things? So we're working on a number of different things there. And then, like I said, draft week, we'll have Mark Ragel do the first-round mock draft. I'll do the Vikings mock draft for all of their picks, which is, only a part-time job this year because they only have the 4. And then we will have our cast of thousands over in Green Bay to get some seen before the draft, and then it'll be go time with the draft coverage on Thursday night. So quite a few things coming. We're doing draft position preview podcasts on video, on YouTube, all of those kinds of things. So we have quite a few things coming over the next couple of weeks. People, whether they want an audio, video, or in print, they will not lack for options from us.
Any important items, because you and I haven't talked in a while. We've certainly not talked since you attended the owners meetings down, I think, Florida way. So what? Sometimes you can get some good material out of there, sometimes not so much. What's at the top of the list from a Viking standpoint that you got out of those meetings?
I think the most interesting thing I heard from Kevin O'Connell was the degree to which they see Isaiah Rodgers as an answer in the secondary. I mean, I looked at him and thought, okay, this guy could be a depth piece. He could be somebody that steps in on special teams. He's got great speed. He's somebody that's done quite a bit of special teams work in the NFL, and then maybe you step him in where you need to. But he's a smaller corner, so I kind of thought, okay, we'll see how this fits with the Brian Flores defense. But Kevin O'Connell talked pretty optimistically about him, largely because of what Brian Flores said. He talked about when Flores kind of gets that look in his eye about a player, he's believing pretty strongly. He's pretty convicted about that guy's potential, and you kind of just let him drive that bus and let him talk about what he sees. So I think, he talked about Isaiah Rodgers being a fairly big contributor in their secondary. So they may be looking at this and saying, we have a guy that we think can play a bigger role than probably a lot of people were considering, and that may change the calculation a little bit. I think corner is still going to be a need, but I was very interested to hear that because that's a different type of projection than I expected for him. And obviously they're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones that have all the information, but I thought that was awfully noteworthy that he went there given the need at that position and given kind of the growth potential that may exist for him in this defense.
Was that where the Wilfs spoke? I'm trying to remember where I saw comments.
Yes.
That seemed to get into the issue of whether in the wake of the O'Connell contract, there's any sort of shifting of power in there, even if there's no title change. Because I think there's this undercurrent that over a period of time, O'Connell has become more powerful beyond just coaching. So can you speak to that, what they had to say about that, and sort of what your gut tells you about that whole question regarding the sharing of power and whether O'Connell, whether the title has changed or not, is more directly involved in stuff that has to do with what we might associate with a general manager's job?
Yeah, I think where this has gone, first of all, in terms of title or in terms of official roles, there has been no change. My understanding is that they did not alter anything in Kevin O'Connell's deal, and one of the main reasons for that is Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's old deal is still in effect, and my understanding is that he had control of the roster as part of that arrangement, so you can't have two people that have the final say on deals that have to be mutually exclusive on those things. So my understanding is there was no change there, and I think Kevin O'Connell certainly has been more educated. He's been more involved in some of those conversations. He certainly has learned salary cap stuff. He's learned about how to use the franchise tag and how no trade clauses work and dead money and all of those types of things. He's, I think, a bigger part of those conversations than he was in 2022, but the actual power structure of things I don't believe has changed whatsoever. I think what you do see, though, is there's more of a conversation. There's more of a back and forth with the front office and the coaching staff, probably in a lot of ways that helped them. I certainly think in free agency last year. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has talked about this, and I know the Wilfs are pretty big on this too, that the kind of the watchwords for them are process and alignment. How did you arrive at this decision? And are you on your own on this, or is everybody else that's in the organization that's going to be affected by this on board with it, or at least willing to support it if they're not completely on board with it? There's a lot of discussion, I know, when they are involved with the front office and the coaching staff about those things. They're asking a lot of those questions about just how aligned is everybody on this? How good do you feel in a group setting on it? So that does, even if you have the pecking order in terms of who makes the final decision on the roster, I think their management style sort of pushes the decision makers in Minnesota towards this a little more collaborative model, to use the Kevin O'Connell phrase. But I think that's something the Wilfs have emphasized as well. That's kind of been their check on a lot of the people to make the decisions when they get asked about things, and when they get asked what they think, their first question tends to be, well, is everybody on board with this, or is there a division here? So I think a lot of that, even if the titles and roles have not officially changed, means everybody has to be able to work fairly well together.
What concert were you videoing from the other day?
I was at Jack White at the Palace Theater. That was night 2 of that.
Okay.
So had missed him several times when he'd been in town, and the reviews from John Bream and company are always just like fawning over how great he is. And so I saw him live, 85 minutes, said about 10 words, just pretty much straight rock the entire time. It was a great show.
So you're not complaining. You're saying you don't need the byplay. You don't need a lot of storytelling. Just give us the music.
Well, it depends on who it is, I think. I saw McCartney a few years ago, I want to hear him tell stories.
No question.
He just has great stories about, Jimi Hendrix playing in a bar in London when they were there, and all of these kinds of things. Like, you want to hear him tell stories. Jack White has seen a lot as well and played with a lot of people, but I'm also, it was packed, and I'm getting old enough that it's like, if you can get me out of here at a reasonable hour, I can go find a YouTube interview to hear your stories another time. I'm okay getting out of here before 11 o'clock so I can get my sleep.
You might be an old soul, Ben Goessling. Who knows? Because you're not old yet.
Yeah, I think there's probably
not
the
old
fact
yet.
that I'm still listening to rock music probably makes me an old soul.
Yeah, that's also true. Great stuff as always, my friend. We will chat next week as we get ever closer to the draft. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. Ben Goessling, brought to you by our very good friends at Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. Lavelle in about 33 minutes. The top 5 at 5, which I assume will include previews from Guardsy on big game for the Wild, big game for the Wolves, and what else?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
The Wolves won a big one. The Wild have a big one. And the Twins have one.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.